for our afternoon stream. How is everybody doing today? Today has been an interesting day. It's been a lovely day, honestly. And we are going to be using a handful of things today. So we'll be using our watercolors as always. We will be using our pen, just a normal big pen. You guys can get these at the store or steal them from a bank or something, right? Nothing special. And we will be using our Illo sketchbook. And so let's go over what we've done lately. So this morning we had a nice stream. We had like I just went online and I just started like going about went over for like an hour and a half this morning, and we just answered a lot of questions. We talked about hands, we talked about faces, we talked about all of this stuff. Let's zoom in a little bit for each one of these. And today, let me turn this off, see if that actually matters. No, turn off. There you go. That's a little better, I guess. All right, so what should we draw today? Dude, you were saying there was going to be a fourth book. Yeah, I'm gonna have Coffee Break Doodles number 2, version 2, volume 2, ready to go probably within the week. So that'll be fun. Something interesting that was really fun today was that I was teaching a wonderful old lady that went to sketch with me at the coffee shop today. I was teaching her very basic cartooning. Very basic, like straight up like the most basic of basics. And I was teaching her how to draw a face properly. Because she was drawing like her little character, and her little character was something like this, right? Something like that. And I was telling her that she just needs to learn how to divide the face a little bit so she can get better at doing what she wants to do. So I taught her to just split the face in half. I taught her to make this into her eyebrow line, draw the eyes right underneath, and draw the nose up until the first mark of your circle or your shape. It could be a square, it could be a whatever. Darken the top lines of your eyes so it looks a little bit more in depth, and then from there draw the mouth. And then draw the chin going around it. Within like 10 minutes, she was actually drawing relatively decent faces. And she started asking about hair and how to do that and stuff like that. But that was a little bit more complicated to explain to her. So she got a little overwhelmed, but at the same time, she was incredibly happy and she took some homework. So she's going to be drawing a bunch of faces. Even if they're simple, take it. Even if they're simple. She's going to be drawing a lot of faces to help her understand this concept. And it was really nice to see somebody that's just actually trying to learn, even though she is at like an older age. She's about like, I would say about 75 or so. So we have about 200 people on the chat. So I need you guys to hit that button. You know what button I'm talking about. The little share button. We had 25,000 people in each one of our streams, the last 2 streams. So the moment that we get to 50 shares, I will continue the lesson. How about that? So I will just draw faces until we get to that level. And it's the same concept. Split it in 4, draw your eyebrows, your nose, the other spaces for your eyes, your mouth, and then you can draw your jaw. That is a very basic concept, as opposed to the other way that people are taught is to split this, draw the jaw first, and then try to figure out how your spacing works. Like this is your eye line. And that works too, but it's just never been very consistent for me to leave the space for the hairline and stuff. I always seem to have like a really short head whenever I do it like that. So we have 17. What kind of art do I do? Ooh, let me see if I can show you guys. I'll grab my iPad. Let's see. All right, you guys are about to see some of my design work. So, come on. While we get those shares, we got to get to 50 before we continue. So let's keep on clicking those so that we can actually get there. Let's go on my Procreate. Where's my Procreate? Gallery. All right. I'll show you guys a couple of my designs that I've done lately. So that is a logo that I'm doing right now for somebody. That is a drawing of Vicky. And I like to play around with a lot of different concepts, right? This is my how to draw book. That's the back cover for it. Cal Gaston. And things like this, like for example, here, let's go into this one. This is the sort of stuff that I used to like to do before. Not export, hold on. No. Let's just view it. Time-lapse replay. So if you're playing with perspective and you want to actually get better, you have to just actually go in and practice it over and over and over and over and over. We need one more share before we can go on. One more. Who's going to be the champion? All right, we have enough. So let's go back to our drawing. All right, now that we have about 50 something people, we're gonna end up getting like about 500 people in the chat, which is awesome. I love the way that Instagram works. I hope that they don't ban that shit. But again, I'm in the UK, so I don't know if that's even gonna affect me at all. But it might. So hopefully it doesn't affect me at all, because it's the only platform that's actually showing my work to people nowadays. So what should we learn today? What should we draw? We're almost done with this page, so we can continue on to the next page. But I need you guys to tell me, what would you guys like to learn today? Let me load up the chat over on YouTube as well, because I normally neglect my YouTube, and I probably shouldn't. All right, so we have a couple people in the chat. We have Paintbrush Colorful. Hey, how's it going? It's not visible. What do you mean not visible? It should be visible. Proportions. How to draw better. Just practice. Honestly, practice and take notes for yourself. That's the only way that you're going to get better. I can't magically tell you a technique to get you better. Like, I don't know what's wrong with your drawing. So unless I actually take the time to individualize like my lessons for each one of them, I can't really just make like a magical thing that's going to make your drawings better. So that is not a really good question. Shadows and shading. You know, actually, that does not sound too bad. That sounds actually like a good one. I don't normally go into shadows and shading, so that might be something that is actually worth going into. Shading. AKA light and shadows. So let's see. If you guys wanted to get better at shading for your characters or for anything in particular, you need to understand the basic concept of light and how it affects the things that you're drawing. So let's say that we have this average dude. I'm just going to draw a quick face. Okay. This dude is the most standard character you can possibly draw, and we will call him Stan. Stan is a very normal character, my OC or whatever you want to call him, and I want to draw him and I want to shade him in a proper way. How do I achieve that? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to set a light source. In this case, let's set a light source right here. The light source is going to generate light. In this case, let's just make it the sun so it makes it nice and easy. The sun produces light in a uniform way going towards us from the sun. So there's no differentiation of angles from the light. So if I want to shade this properly, I have to see what parts of this light is hitting my character. In order to be able to do that, you need to understand a little bit about perspective. It's perspective because perspective is what's going to give you the faces that you need to be able to create the shadows in a proper spot. So if the lighting is hitting from this direction, obviously this part is going to be completely shaded. Right? That is just a basic concept of it. Light hits and it creates shadow on the opposite side. So, but just by doing that simple math, if this is broken down into a basic shape, that side would be shaded. The neck is a cylindrical object, right? So this would be shaded as well. The nose is an object more similar to this, right? Kind of like a diamond, but it has a couple faces. The top of it would be hit with light, so therefore it would be light. The sides of it would probably be shaded a little bit because the light is not hitting it directly. But what's happening as well is that there's going to be a shadow underneath because the light is hitting and casting a shadow. Now, the same thing happens with your eyebrows. Your eyebrow is a cylindrical object, your brow muscle. So anything underneath this is going to be slightly shaded, kind of like you would shade a cylinder that's bent. And the eyes and everything else is also a basic shape. So when you are drawing your eyes, it's a sphere. So if you have your eye, and the light is coming from this direction, then all this side would just be shaded. Also, a little bit of the eyebrow, or the eyelash, would cast a shadow. So therefore, that would be shaded as well. So before we get going on to further on, I'm going to explain to you guys the two differences between shadows. So, okay, now we have about 300 people in the chat. I'm pretty sure we can get that to like at least a good 80. So let's see if we can get the shares to 80 at least, and we'll continue. There's two types of shadows. There's cast shadows. Cast shadows are shadows that are cast by something. So if this is a light source and that is this on the ground is a cast shadow. Okay? Normally shadows depend on the light source. So if you have a uniform light source, you just follow your light source through and then you end up with, like this is the sun again, you end up with where the placement is supposed to go. This works at every angle. Okay. Now, what's tricky about cast shadows is that it actually deforms depending on what the other object is that you are casting it on. So let's say we have like these two spheres, right? And I gotta represent that this one is on top of this one. I can't just draw a circle because then it'll look wrong. I can't just do that. This has a form, and this is casting a shape around the form. So you would have to take into consideration the shape of the object underneath or next to it in order to be able to cast a shadow properly. When you're sitting into a wall and you have an object that you want to cast a shadow with, you would end up with something along the lines of this. So I'm going to explain to you guys when you guys would actually use each individual shadow. So whenever something is being cast, aka a nose, right? A nose is going to have a shadow underneath depending on where the light is hitting. But that line is normally, that shadow is going to be on top of your lip, or it's going to be on the side, or it's going to be somewhere like that. So you have to take into consideration that as you draw cast shadows. Now, the other kind of shadows that we have are form shadows. Form shadows are the shadows that you use to give an object form. When it comes down to something like a box, it's normally the object, like the shadows in the actual shape instead of the actual shadows that are being cast on the ground. When you talk about cylinders, again, it's a very, just use your subdivisions and your perspective to be able to get to that. These are more form shadows, and you see these more so on a face when it comes down to the roundness of your nose, the roundness of your cheeks, the roundness of your chin, the roundness of your actual cheekbone, and you end up getting the side of the face, and you end up getting the sides of your edges of your face, right? Those are mostly your form shadows when it comes down to your actual face. Cast shadows tend to be the ones underneath your eyebrows, the one underneath your nose, and the ones underneath your mouth, your lips. That is what a cast shadow would be, as opposed to the form shadows that are the ones that form the shape of your element. The other way to distinguish them is these are hard and these are soft. I draw a face faster than you draw a stickman. That's funny. So that is the two differences that you have to take into consideration when you are drawing an actual character. If you want to shade something properly, you need to take into consideration light sources, the facets of your character, and actually like the deviations in a form. So you can practice doing all of these by taking basic shapes, let's say like a beanbag, cutting out a part of it. Let's just cut out like a big section of it. Giving a light source, and then shading this shape. That is how you get used to complex forms of shading. Other things that we're not even touching highlights yet. Highlights is a whole other avenue, and we'll talk about that in a second. But a combination of these two is what gives you the look that you guys really want. Right? We are not taking lives. A combination of these is what actually provides you more like realism. Oh my God, stop asking for this shit. I'm not going to take you on to the live, so stop. I will ban the next person that tries to do that. You guys are just interrupting the class. So, all right, we have about 1,100 people in the chat. Let's get this to 150. Let's get the shares to 150. And meanwhile, I will draw things with shadows. Cast shadows. Let's see, what is a part of a cast shadow? So eyebrows, no, eyelids in an eyeball, right? You have your eyelids and you have your eyelashes. Come on, guys, hit the little share button. We won't continue on to the next. We won't go on to highlights until you guys get to 150. We have about 1,000 people. So we need at least 150 right here. There you go. You guys are going at it. So cast shadows in an eye would come from the eyelid. The eyelid is a shape on top of your eyeball. Okay, so if you cast a shadow, this would get a little bit darker. Therefore, just making your eyelashes really dark is kind of like a good way to indicate depth. But just realize that this is also a sphere. So it also has your shape shadows. Right? And then the eyelid also has a circular motion. So that also has a shape shadow. But then the eyelashes would cast a shadow as well on top of the eye if you really, 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 really wanted to get to that level of detail. There's a form shadow underneath for the bottom eyelid, and all the creases that you see, every crease that you see in an eye, the reason that you see that crease is because this piece is intersecting this piece. So it's casting a little bit of a shadow there. Most of the really dark lines that you see in a person's face is because it's casting a slight shadow to it. Some part is creasing like that. Look at that. You see a line there, but that's only because there's a shadow being cast there. There's no line there for me. But if you see my finger, if I bend it, now there's a line. And that's just the shadow from my finger, from my fingertip, casting a shadow onto this other part that's raised. That's all that's happening. So understanding light and shadows is very, very good, because if you can distinguish between a cast shadow and a form shadow, you're going to be able to actually manipulate the things that you draw to have even more depth. Now, let me explain what happens with lighting when you have a non-directional light. Like if your lighting is just completely straight, yes, it's very easy to do that. But let's say that you have a light that's like a cone, like a flashlight or something like that. Something that expands. Well, if you have something that expands, your light is going to embark a bigger circumference of it. Therefore, you're going to have your shadow just fit within the spaces that it's not hitting. And that sounds a little bit complicated. So let's make some examples. If I have a normal directional light, this can just be followed to create my shadow as long as I need it, right? If I have a non-directional light, like a flashlight or something like that, something that comes more from a point, you're going to see the shadow go all the way over there, because it's going to match the light source. So whenever you are actually, all right, I'll ban you. There you go. Good. You're done. Block. Done. You want it? Okay, good. Bye-bye. Hey, I give people what they want. So form shadows, cast shadows are going to be more affected by this than form shadows. Form shadows are going to relatively keep the same sort of shading. But you have to keep in mind the difference in elements that are going to actually be affected by this. So just for an intro level class on shadows, this is all you really need to know. Okay. All right, so let's move on to lighting. Let's move on to highlights. Highlights are the favorite part of everybody, right? Like everybody loves to do the highlights at the end. So highlights. What are highlights? Well, highlights are just the reflection of light. If you have a highlight inside of an eye, let's say you have that, what you're saying with that highlight is that there's a circular light that is hitting you right in the face. That is all you're doing. So if your highlight is not a circle, but it's a square or a rectangle, all you're saying is that your light source is a rectangle. If your highlight's a star or any odd shape like that, then you're saying that the light source in front of it is a star. So you can get very creative with all this. You can get really creative with your highlights, but just understand that the reason why that shape is because the light source is that shape. Now, if you have multiple highlights, some people really like to embellish things with a bunch of highlights. That just means you have 3 different light sources hitting your eye. So when we take that into consideration, especially for our eyes or for anything like a sphere or something like that, right? Just adding a highlight in a random spot is kind of weird. But if you work your shadows as well, your form shadows, and you slowly build up the shadows until you have a more pinpointy object, that's going to show more of how the light is hitting it. But there's also diffuse lighting, kind of like there's hard shadows, like cast shadows and form shadows. There's diffused highlights, and then there's focused highlights. Focused highlights are kind of like this. You see one solid shape. You're not going to, things like metal and liquidy things have these sort of highlights. They're highly reflective surfaces. So you're going to see a lot more of a very strong highlight. When it comes down to something, let's say like a face, you can't always have a super strong highlight. So sometimes you have to use the light and diffuse it, kind of like a shadow would, but it's just a more diffused light. So you can think about it in both ways. When you're drawing eyes and you have your eyelid, for example, that's a part that gets used a lot. The light is coming from this direction. You're going to add a little bit of a shadow or a highlight, depending on what type of style you like to illustrate with. This is going to be lit more. That's going to be more shadow. And then you would have your highlight right there because it's coming from there. That is essentially how you use highlights. Then there's rim lights, right? Rim lighting. Rim lighting comes from an object being mostly dark and having the edges of it be lit up. This happens when the light source is coming from a part in the back of the shape. So or in the sides of the shape. So when it comes down to like a face, and you're going to do a rim light, you would just figure out the rim lighting, kind of like you would on a basic shape, and then start figuring out where everything else, like your cast shadows and stuff like that, would fall. But the face is very complex, so it normally has curvatures and dents and other little features like that prevent it from just being a straight line. So you have to just get used to doing those. Cool. So we got about 600 people in the chat now. Let's get that to 200. Let's get to 200 shares, people. So yeah, rim lighting is very interesting. You can do it a lot on hair. Like hair is really, really It's really important to learn how to do it on hair because it just provides a really cool look. It just provides a highlight that normally wouldn't be there, and it just makes it look really, really nice. So I like to do it on hair, and I like to set up the lighting in the back for hair. So rim lighting is another way to light up your objects, and there's ambient light as well, which is more so I can't really demonstrate that with just a black pen. I would need like a digital program or like an actual painting surface to be able to show you. But light has color. Light has color. Highlights are not always white. Are the color of your light. If your light is blue, your highlights would be blue. If your light is green, your highlights would be green. Your highlights are not always white, and that is where I can distinguish a person that has experience drawing as opposed to a person, or with color theory and stuff like that, as opposed to a person that's just doing it purely on style. I can tell immediately by just looking at a drawing and seeing, oh, they put white highlights when there's no white light. Cool. They're learning. That's really cool still, but you understand that the person is at that level. So if you want to be recognized by people that actually know their shit, make sure that you actually take time to understand what you are drawing. Lighting is no different than perspective or anatomy. It's something that you need to learn in order to be able to create fun scenes. Like this would be a cast shadow combined with a shape shadow combined with a rim light, right? So I would get that sort of scene. And then I can make this like really epic scene, like, oh, it's looking down a hill into a city. Oh. It's up to you what you do with this information. I can show you guys the basics over and over and over and over and over and over. But if you guys don't try to implement these into your own drawings, it's just going to be useless knowledge that you guys just kind of categorize into the, oh, I know that now, but I don't really use it. So take the time right now, if you guys feel like it, and go get your sketchbook and draw something with these concepts so that it's nice and fresh in your brain and that you can actually put your information that you're learning into play. So you understand what you're drawing. That is going to be an absolutely important aspect of you actually using your sketchbook to learn, as opposed to using your sketchbook just to doodle. Because even though it's nice and it's good to have really cool things in your sketchbook is not necessarily meant to be like a pretty drawing book. Your sketchbook is your learning tool. Your sketchbook is your way to get better. This is your way you train. This is your gym. This is your daily journal of growth. So whenever you are drawing, make sure that you are taking advantage of that and thinking, hey, how can I make this drawing, or how can I learn something with each page that I draw? As opposed to being like, oh, my pages are ugly. Oh, I don't want to show my sketchbook to. No, show your sketchbook to as many people as you can, because that's the only way you're gonna know if something is wrong. You're never gonna learn, and you're not gonna get better if you just sit there thinking that your drawings are pretty, or you keep on thinking that your drawings aren't pretty because you keep on telling yourself that by yourself. Let other people tell you what you need to work on. I used to do that a lot. Whenever I was stuck and I didn't know how to grow, I would ask people around me. I would be like, hey, dude, look at this drawing. Tell me what's wrong with it. Oh, nothing's wrong with it. I'm like, okay, cool. You're no help. The next person, hey, you're an artist too. What is wrong with this drawing? And then, oh, well, that looks a little bit off. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate you, because now I have something to work on, right? If you constantly keep thinking that your artwork is the shit, but you don't really realize that it's not, you're never going to get past a certain part. Like you're never going to receive the knowledge that you need or the time that you need to take to be able to get better at a certain topic if everybody around you just tells you, you're good, you're awesome, you're best. That's why I don't take criticism or like I don't take any criticism or compliments at heart, like at all. I just don't. Like I don't. Like someone can tell me, "Oh, that's really cool." I'm like, "Awesome, thank you." "Oh, that's really ugly." "Oh, thank you." And that's it. Like that is how I carry myself because that's the only way that I have to be my own self-critic. And I learned to do that, so therefore my artwork expanded and it exploded into a different level of being able to understand things, right? Like my random doodles are better than what my finished sketches were like a couple years ago. So, and now I spend my time not necessarily drawing pretty things, but just trying to figure out how to do it just in case I ever do need to take this and I need to make like, I don't know, a pinup or something. I can just take that knowledge that I've learned from doing all those little exercises and now I can just create freely. I can use all that knowledge and then just apply it to create the things that I want. These are all basic shapes. This is all like that's a sphere. This is more like a little diamond. Not my mouth. My eye sockets fall within that section, so I know that my eyes have to be there, angled, up, whatever style I decide that I want to draw them. Eyelids, eyebrows go on top of the eyelids. The roundness of my forehead leads to my nose bridge, that leads to my nose, that leads to my lips. Leads to my chin, leads to my ear. Let's make this an L for something. Which leads to my jaw. My jaw and the bottom of my ear are connected to my collarbone. My collarbone connects to the front of my neck as well. That provides me my neck. My neck is going to have a little bit of spacing before it gets to the breasts or the tissue of the actual, like if it was like a man, it would be your pectorals. Then from here, I know that this goes to my armpit and the edge of my neck goes to the edge of my collarbone, which is my shoulder. This is going to lead down my arm in an intersecting lacing way, which are arms. They're a pain in the ass to learn, but once you learn them, it's kind of hard to not see it anymore. This is going to be my rib cage. My rib cage has muscles and it's going to provide that curvature that I want. This is going to lead to my rib cage, which has a divot in the front. That bottom of the divots are going to connect to my hip bones, providing me my abs. This outside edge is going to provide me my hips. This little circle that I drew as my hip bone is going to provide me the angle that I need for my legs. My legs have volume, and they are also that I know and I studied many times so that now I can actually draw these with them being accurate. The combination of the knee, the kneecap, the thigh, and the bottom part of the leg, like the calves, is actually quite easy. It's kind of like two teardrops, right? But we don't have enough space to draw the feet, so we're just going to protrude it like that. This has depth. This is the bone that goes down from my kneecap. My overlapping lines for my calf, for my thigh muscles connect to my kneecap like so. This provides that little tiny divot on the side of my leg that allows me to be able to overlap my calf and make it look all right. This is also where you would add like socks or anything like that wrapping around your thigh or your leg. You can add clothing on this by just following the lines on top of your drawing. If you start segmenting your things in the proper direction, not wrong like here, you end up with like proper clothing if you decide that you want to give it clothing, right? And then just not hiding elements, like my other shoulders right here, which would mean that my arm comes out from there. Ba, 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 ba. And then little details like how much hair to give it, where the flow is, and all that stuff comes from just practice. That just comes from understanding what you're drawing and what you want to get out of the piece. So if you go about something like that and I want to light it, let's say that we give a light source here. Let's walk through our shape and then just shade everything properly. So if we have this, our head and our hair is going to have volume, right? So our hair itself is going to be lit at the top, but it's going to be shadowed at the bottom because just a normal shape like this would be shaded like that. So I'm going to shade the bottom of my hair. I'm not going to give it those little streak highlights because that would not really happen if the light source isn't on the side. It's right at the top, creating like a rim light for this. This would actually create a element like that. Now from here, the hair is casting a shadow on top of your character. So you would have shadows on that part of the face. Your cheekbones create a little bit of a shadow, and the edge of your face would create a shadow as well. The side of your face, I dropped my pen. Here's another one. Let's see. So your chin would create a shadow because of an object being like that. It would just be like that, right? So your nose would also create a shadow underneath, and it would cast a shadow onto the lips. The bottom of your eyes would be casting a slight shadow underneath as well, and the inside of your ear would cast a shadow as well. The bottom of your neck would be really dark because the light is coming directly from the top, and this is the shadow of the chin and the head casting on the neck. Your breasts and anything that is circular would cast a shadow underneath. Again, the rib cage is this shape, right? So what happens here? This gets shaded because the light source is from the top. The thighs. This would be casting a shadow on the bottom. Again, if the light is hitting from here, this is probably blocking most of the lighting except for the ones at the edge. So the lighting would go like that. This has circular shape. That would be more like a rim light too. And just follow through your shape like that. Continuing on and on and on. If this person had a piece of clothing like a t-shirt or something, the t-shirt itself would cast a shadow onto the elements like the arm. The breast would cast a shadow a little bit underneath, depending on how tight the clothing is or so. If there's a t-shirt here as well, that would cast a shadow onto the stomach. The arms, if the lighting is coming from that direction, the lighting would light up that part, and it would light up this part. So that is how you would go about it. Now, when you start adding more muscle structures, right? When you start adding actual anatomy and you end up getting more detailed lines, then each one of these gets its own set of shadows. Same thing with the bicep and the tricep and the like muscles right here, right? That is going to cast its own individual shadows for each one of these elements. If you add anything like accessories, like a hat, let's say you added like an elbow, a hat or something on top of the character, right? This would cast a shadow underneath, and this would cast a shadow onto this. So that is the concept of shadows and light. You have to alternate between your soft shadows, your hard shadows, your soft lights, your hard lights, and actually know the perspective and angles of your elements so that you can actually create proper lighting. Lighting is hard. Lighting is hard to learn. Lighting is not an easy concept. And that's why not a lot of people go into hyperrealism. Because hyperrealism is fucking hard. Not saying that cartoons aren't. Cartoons in itself is not necessarily a hard element to learn, but learning how to do it properly at an expert level is incredibly hard. Ask anybody that's tried to draw a kid's book. Drawing something doesn't always have to mean you have to shade it, right? But sometimes it does look cool when you do. So that is the concept behind, lighting in general. It's just a matter of understanding your perspective. So to learn this, what do you need to learn? You need to learn light sources. You need to learn a little bit of color theory if you want to be really good at it. You need to learn perspective because it makes it a million times easier to follow a little diagram to know where to shade than to just randomly do it. Perspective. And if you're really, really interested in doing cartoons of people and characters, you need to learn anatomy. Right? You need to learn the concepts of anatomy. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to replicate these lines properly. Did I say dyke? No, I did not say that. I'm 17 when I want to learn how to draw. How do you, it's too late. It's not too late. I started at 19. Actually, no, I was 18 when I started drawing. So, and I drew like a 10-year-old. So there's never a time gap in which you can't start learning how to draw. You can be 50, you can be 60, and you would still be able to properly learn how to draw because it's not something that just magically like is given to people. You don't just magically have the ability to draw. Yes, some people are more inclined to be able to draw because they see things like this easier. But it's not necessarily a thing that only people that have like that ability can do. I did not have that ability. And the reason that I teach you guys how to do all this stuff is because I didn't know how to do it. And it frustrated the living hell out of me. So I took the time to be able to find a way that I can make it easier for all of you. All right, we have 1.8 thousand people in the chat. We need to get that to at least 300. We need to get at least 300 shares before we continue. And we'll go on to another page. We'll learn something else. But I need at least 300 shares. Let's do it. Bom, bom, bom. Meanwhile, I'm just going to draw, knees. While I wait, I'm just going to draw knees with leg muscles. So let's get that to 300. Ooh, that was quick. Let's make it 350. That was really, we have like 2,000 people in the chat. You guys can get that to at least 350. And you guys got to give me a theme. Like, what are we going to draw next? We learned lighting. Cool. That was a good one. Let's read some comments while we get there. Oh, you made it. Are you live on something else also? I'm live on 3 different platforms. I'm live on TikTok, I'm live on Instagram, and I'm live on YouTube. Can you add more light, please? If I add more light, it's going to wash out the drawing. Look, I'm going to show you guys. Like the lighting for my YouTube channel. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. But as you see, if my hand is going to start adding an extra lighting, so I don't like using that light. So we're going to turn it off. Lighting is pretty dark, hard to see what you're working on. Yeah, I understand. I know. Sorry about that. But there's nothing I can really do about it right now. I don't really have much lighting equipment. So you guys could always donate some. If you guys feel like you guys really want to be a part of it. No, I read it. I just only have two eyes, and I'm trying to like draw and teach and do things everything at once. So it's not always easy for me to look at all the comments. It's just not possible. So yeah, we got to 472. Let's move on to the next page. We already did hands. We did hands like earlier today. So we're not doing hands again. We already did hands. So we're gonna do something else. So we've done hair. Nah, I think I'm just gonna make a choice and I'm just going to decide on something for myself. So let's see. What do I want to teach you guys? What is something that you guys really need to learn? Ooh, we can talk about line weight and contrast. Ooh, yeah. Let's talk about line weights and how that is going to make your artwork better. So you can have depth in your drawing in a couple different ways. So depth through line weight. One way that you can get depth is by subdividing your shape, right? And figuring out the perspective. That's version number 1. Method number 2, we just talked about that, and it's lighting, shadows, that sort of stuff. But method number 3 is line weight. By simply changing the light weight of my drawing, I can provide myself an interesting approach to lighting. This looks like there's a big light source right here. Right? So by using line weight properly, you can actually get a lot of depth from your drawings. So how I use it is whenever I'm drawing a character, imagine if my light source is going to be a generic light source from here. Anything that is not on that side is going to automatically get a slightly darker side. Anything that's not hitting the light or the side of the light is going to get a little bit darker. That is going to play a role when it comes down to the nose, to the mouth, and also sometimes to like the eyes, but not so much in the eyes. It more so happens whenever you are playing with your line width and it's hitting your eyebrows or your eyes. I just like to darken the top line a little bit more to give it the emphasis of it being eyelashes. Right? It gives you the representation of eyelashes, and it also gives you the representation of depth, because that looks so much better than that. So yes, no. So that is one aspect that you can use. This is a heavily used concept in comics. This is an absorbently used thing in comics. And it's something that you guys can get better at by just simply paying consideration into the things that you are drawing. And learning little by little, like learn by being your basic shapes, and then just darkening a certain side of it, and see how that works. Combine that with your cast shadows, and you have some more depth. Combine that with your actual form shadows, and you have an actual complete scene. So that is how you approach using line weight for depth. Ta-da! That was a nice little quick one. All right. What's next? What's next, people? What should we draw next? What pen are you using to draw? I'm using just a basic Bic pen. There's nothing special to it. These little like grippy things are just to have my hand not hurt because I draw so much. Okay, anatomy is not a response. It's not I can't teach you guys the entirety of anatomy. Everything I teach is anatomy. The eyes that I taught you guys is anatomy. I'm teaching you guys the faces, that's anatomy. Teaching you hands, that's anatomy. Anatomy is not, it's a too broad of a term, so don't say that. We did arm anatomy not too long ago too. We went over arms and we did arms and we talked about arms. This one I think is on YouTube too, so you guys can go. Let's do feet. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do feet. We haven't done feet. So let's draw feet. Feet are the bane of the existence of so many people. But at the end of the day, it's not actually all that hard to draw, especially if you correlate this to other parts of your body. So I like to draw my feet in the basic shape like this. That is, to me, the basic shape of a foot, because this can be turned into shoes. That can be turned into more like a realistic anatomy if I need to draw like a barefoot person. Right? So this shape in general is very, very useful when it comes down to drawing feet. The trick to doing this, though, is to understand how your connection with your ankle works. Your connection with your ankle works kind of like a pivot, right? And this should look familiar because this is the same way that you approach a rib cage. This, where your abs come from underneath, that is the same concept you're going to do with your feet. And then you can rotate your foot all the way around, all the way up, because that allows you to pivot your arm and your foot in that direction. Now, taking this and making it into a foot is not really hard, but you just have to get really used to the perspective of how the foot works. And let me explain to you guys a couple different things that are needed to learn in the foot. So if you go through your ankle and you just draw through all the way through, you're going to get the ball of your foot, the back of it. You're going to have a little bit in the back for your ankle, but the ball of your foot falls directly underneath your bone. Okay? Then from there, you already have this little gap, so take the edges of both gaps and bring them down to a point. This is going to give you a trapezoid or like a pyramid, and then just add your ankle. That is your basic shape for your foot. Now let's see if this works going from the side. Yeah, it works, right? Let's do it from the back. Same thing happens here. Ankle. Hey, that works pretty well too. Let's do it 3/4. Hey, what do you know? That actually works really well too. So one thing you can do to get better at these is to just get used to the connection point with the ankle. That is the hardest part. The connection point with the ankle is the reason that the rib cage is hard, because you need to understand that depth that goes underneath. You need to understand that an element is coming out of this area in the middle. Okay, so if you can get used to that notion of something coming out from under there, it's going to be incredibly easy for you to be able to mask other feet on. And with that, you can change the shape. Once you understand the basic shape of it, you can start playing around with different shapes and seeing what you can do with those. Right? If you want like an ogre foot, if you want like an animal foot, it's the same concept. Just inside like a velociraptor. It's the same elements, just applied differently to create a different look. And just thinking about it as such a basic shape it makes it really easy to draw, for example, legs into feet. Well, let's say that we don't want that type of foot. We want something different. Cool. Oh, wait, we want a shoe. We're going to draw around our shape, and we're going to create a shoe. Oh, has socks too. So let's draw socks. And then that is how you have to start visualizing it so that it actually makes sense. If you just constantly think of it as like, I don't know, it's just lines, or just draw your feet really flat to the sides like this, right? If you're constantly just drawing your characters like this, you can still fix this by just giving it depth. So it doesn't have to be a flat pose. You can still have a lot of depth within those simple poses, but you need to be able to understand that that shape has depth. It's not just a side shoe, right? It's not just a flat line. This is supposed to be a cylindrical shape going into a very complex shape that is just simplified by a little pyramid, or whatever you want to call it. How do you space the toes out? The toes are spaced out kind of like this. You have your big toe and your knuckle. Then all of these are kind of just like bent in there. So all of those are kind of just like spaced together, and your toe is normally the only one that's really doing anything significant. So when you're drawing like different feet positions, like right, you identify the toe, the big toe, like, you know, like knuckle or like bones or whatever, and then the rest of them can just be like a little box because they don't really move. Like, you don't really have to put too much attention to them, honestly. As long as you have that depth for your toe, you should be able to be fine. So let's try to get to 600. Oh wait, we only have 600 people, and we have about 500 shares. So I think we're good. I think we're good. We don't need to do anything. We're just gonna continue drawing. But let's apply something like shoes to this, right? Like an actual shoe, not just like a mock-up. So the reason that I draw my feet like that is because I can go either barefoot or I can go with shoes really, really quickly. And depending on what type of shoes I want, let's say we want heels, right? I know that heels lift the back part of my foot. So I need to add that lift before we even continue, before we do anything. Then from there, I know that they hug the heel of my foot, and it goes around my shape, around. So again, I'm drawing through my shape, and just connect it. And you have heels. Let's draw a different one. Now let's draw, I don't know, snow boots. These shapes go around my foot. Snow boots are normally a little bit bulkier, so I'm going to add a little bit of volume. And they normally have like treads like that. They normally have a nice big sole. So that's kind of how I would approach snow boots. Let's see. What else? Let's finish drawing the feet here, and then we'll move on to a different topic on this side. Let's just fill this in with feet. Yay! This curvature on the bottom of the feet that I'm giving it, right, is coming from the ball of the foot and the ball of the knuckles of the toe. So that provides those two little elements right there. Your toes have knuckles, just like your hand has knuckles, and your hand has like a top and a bottom of your knuckle. right? Top and bottom. Your foot has a top and a bottom. That little padding that you have on your hands, this padding is the bottom knuckle. This is just your bottom knuckle of your foot, of your hand. There you go. See, that is your knuckle. That is the padding is just your knuckle. That's all it is. It's just the skin flexing around your knuckle. So we consider that for the foot as well. And then we have our heel. Those are the two little bumps that you see. And it takes your element from being like that to being more like that. And that's what gives you the nice little curvature here. I love you now. How do you make your own poses? We can talk about poses right here. Yeah, we can do posing. Posing is a good one. Let's finish up the feet though. I don't like leaving like any spaces. Shoes go around your ankle. Around your ankle. Right? That's what shoes do. They go around your leg. High heel shoe from the front, please. Now let's try it. So if we have our foot, our ankle, our foot is going to be coming up and our ankle is up there. This is going around the back of our heel into the front. And then whatever curvature you want to give, that's how you would do it. Do you post drawing tutorials? Well, what do you think? This is getting posted on Instagram. This is getting posted on YouTube. This is getting posted probably on TikTok as well. So if you guys go to my live center and any of them, on that, like YouTube Live has like 250 streams. So if you guys want to learn more about like, you know, like what I'm teaching, all you guys got to do is just go to the YouTube channel, click on the live section, or even not. Like I have like 200 videos that are actually structured like videos too. You know, it's not necessarily just the streams. I have built an entire network of channel that is there for you guys to learn for free. For free. For free. So take advantage of it. I mean, why not? You can just put it on as background music on the back and you guys would probably learn something here and there. So like I highly suggest it. Like I don't want to force anyone to actually go and subscribe. It would be nice to get to that 100,000 subscriber on YouTube so that I can get my plaque. But, you know, it's not something that I'm going to be constantly hounding you guys with anymore. I figure if you guys want to help, you guys will help. If you guys get something out of this, you guys might be more inclined to actually do so. And if you guys already subscribed to it, then awesome. You guys are great. You guys are amazing. You guys can also buy my books. My books are on sale on my links in every one of my platforms. And I have 3 books for sale. So you guys can check those out as well. And that's the best way to actually do that. This guy's the GOAT for real. Wait, does my book what? Help with learning and studying. Yeah. Well, one of my books, Art Block book, is a combination of all these lessons. So you can go and I highly suggest that you pick it up and then you just trace over everything that you see that you don't understand so that you guys can actually make do of it. These also have a number. So these numbers correlate to the streams in the live section of my YouTube. So if you don't understand that section, you can go and actually go watch the live stream. So if you guys need somebody to teach you guys physically, you guys can do that too. But that is something that volume 2 of Art Block is going to have. Volume 1, you got to just do it manually because I didn't number them and I didn't expect this to like blow up the way it did. So it's not necessarily in the volume 1, but it'll be in volume 2. But it's still really good material to learn. Like it's still really valuable stuff. So I highly suggest that you guys check it out. Your voice reminds me of Gus from Breaking Bad. That's funny. That is hilarious. All right, we have space for one more foot. And maybe one more right here. Let's draw one coming forward. Okay, so we have learned quite a bit today. We have learned about shading. We have learned about shadows. We have learned about form shadows, highlights, rim lights, how to apply that. We learned how to apply it to simple creatures, and I walked you guys through a basic concept of how you would apply it to an illustration. So then we talked a little bit about line weight, and we talked a little bit about feet and how to structure them, how to actually see them better. So feetsies. Yay. So now let's finish off with posing. We'll finish off this page and then we'll call it a day. I want you guys to hit that share button as much as you can before we get to the final part of the actual lesson. Handy Amory, hi. Flag Dr. Rod, please tell me about drawing fur, long hair, and hair in general. I have a lot of trouble with this. I'll make hair into the next one. It seems like a lot of you guys are asking for hair, so I will make sure to make a hair one tomorrow. How about that? Drawing with Christos, hello. I struggle with women, breasts. Could you show sketch of that if you have one? Yeah, I mean, I'll show you guys that in the posing. Sorry, what page was that? Male torso in the female anatomy page. Thanks for all the full bits. That one was, well, I've done that quite a bit of times. So if you guys are just looking for a, yeah, if you're just looking for actual male and female anatomy, there's a bunch of it all over the place in my books. Like I talk about this quite often. So you guys can go check out some previous videos and I'd probably have it there. But let's move on to the last section that we have, and that's posing. How do you get better at posing? How? How the hell do we get better at posing? That is something that I was asking myself recently as well, because I decided that I was going to make a whole book, a whole sketchbook on just posing. But I realized that I didn't need to, because the only thing that I really needed to learn is how to draw a rib cage and how to draw a pelvic bone. If I know how to make those two elements and connect them, I can make any pose that I want from this. My arms and stuff like that are going to be coming out of that same element, right? So now if I draw this and I want to change the pose, all I got to do is move my character's legs into the pose that I need. So learning how to draw your basic skeleton at first is going to be an absolutely key factor in learning how to pose your things. That and just your basic concept of perspective and anatomy is going to give you everything you need when it comes down to posing. Right? So let's say you have a little female character, you have your rib cage, a wider hip bones to make it nice and curvy. These little holes right there are going to be the elements where my legs come out. We just drew feet, so let's draw some feet. And let's say I want to draw like a really sexy pose with this, and that's not necessarily this. Well, let's bring the leg up. Let's bring this leg over here. That looks kind of weird. So I don't like that one, but I want something in between. I want something like that. And just like that, it's so easy to actually, since I know where the initial part of my leg is and the end part of my leg is, I can just move that around in space any way that I want until I get to the pose that I want. So poses like, let's say, like bent poses. Let's say we have our rib cage and we have our hip bones bent, right? Leg, could be a leg in the front. It could be a leg in the back. Let's say that we want this leg differently. I can just move it around in my initial sketch as much as I want until I get to the look that I need. Maybe I want my hand down there. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want the hand resting on something. Okay? Posing becomes incredibly simple once you establish the knowledge of your rib cage and your hip bones and how to connect your limbs to it. Your limbs connect to these angles, right? Without knowing that angle, it's going to be really hard for you to draw that. Drawing things into perspective and getting those extra cool poses, it's just a matter of understanding the difference between drawing a tube like this or drawing a tube like that. And that comes with perspective knowledge. Learning how your muscles work, how they interlace, how they connect, how they overlap. That's anatomy. And those are your what? Your what? Your foundational skills. So you should be practicing those all the time. That is your foundations. Shit like lighting. Lighting is not a foundational skill. This is not a foundation. This is good to know, but it's not something that's going to help you draw better. It's going to help you render better. It's going to help you make your drawings look prettier, but it's not going to make your drawings better. Understanding this volumetric way of drawing is going to give you everything you need. So perspective is so damn important, especially when you're learning. When you're starting out, it's so important, and we all skip it. We all skip it. We all assume that we understand perspective. Like, ask anybody that has ever drawn more than a week. They'll be like, oh yeah, I did my perspective work. I know that stuff. And more likely than not, they just understand the concept of creating a vanishing line and then creating a grid and then creating objects on the grid and then connecting them to that line. That is the perspective that they understand. That is not the perspective that you need to be able to understand character design. What you need to understand is how to divide complicated shapes into three-dimensional shapes. That is what you need to learn. And the way that you learn this sort of stuff is very simple. And I walk you guys through the process all the time. But this is the process that you take to get there. Okay? If you do not know how to do this and how to visualize things like this, I'm going to show you right now. Go take notes. Go take fucking notes. Because this is important. I'm sorry for the cussing. Sorry if you have sensitive ears. But this is so important. It needs to be said. So go grab a sketchbook, a pencil, or a pen, and then try to replicate what I do. Okay? So let me show you guys how you learn how to see things like this better. Step 1. Learn to draw a circle. That should be easy enough, right? Step 2. Learn to divide that circle. That is consisting of taking and coming up with the edges of your shape. This is going to give you a couple different elements. You're going to be able to split your elements. You're going to be able to see your elements front and your back. And if you do it in enough sides, it gives you a grid in which you can use to be able to bring things out, bring things in, and be able to actually map out your shape. So get used to drawing a grid on your elements. That's step 2. This is going to take you a while to perfect. This is not going to be something that you learn in an afternoon or perfect in an afternoon. Learning to do this is going to be incredibly tedious, and you're going to have to take the time to actually analyze this. If you don't get one of these concepts, you got to take notes. be like, shit, well, I don't get this. How do I get this to work? I can't see the front and the back. Okay, so I'm going to trace one side like I have a rubber band on my shape. And then I'm going to just keep going around it until I get the notion of feeling like it's an object that I'm putting something on. I never gonna draw like this. Well, then that sucks for you, buddy, because you wish that you could draw like this, because that's the way that you learn how to draw every style. This is a key thing that animators use constantly to be able to break down different characters, different styles, different shapes, different things. So if you think that, oh, well, I never want to draw like that, then you're setting your own style. Cool. Be happy with your lack of growth. You will peak, and then you will come back to this later on, and you're going to eventually end up learning this if you want to get better. So no worries, man. Go click and go look at some girl dancing or something. All right, step 3. Step 3 is going to be deforming that sphere into various shapes. Make it fat, make them long, make them oblong, and get used to drawing your shapes like that. So that is step 3, learning to deform things a little bit. Step 4 is taking 2 of them and slowly merging them together. You can take 2 circles, slowly learn how to merge these things together. Once you get to the point where you can draw a beanbag confidently, then at this point, once you learn how to draw a beanbag, you can draw absolutely everything. Everything. This is the shape that will help you draw everything. Because step 5, this is where you apply your anatomy and you learn to overlap these lines and add elements of perspective to them. And no, not perspective, anatomy. And that's how you get arms. That's how you get legs. That's how you get everything else, even a body. A body is just a beanbag. And knowing how to actually differentiate that. So those are the 5 steps you need to learn to be able to draw like this. So we'll end our lesson for today right there. Okay, it's a nice ending to the lesson. Let's review what we learned and, give you guys a chance to support me by buying my books and subscribing to my shit. That actually helps a lot. So if you guys do like what I do, I have a lot of stuff that you guys can help support with. But let's go over what we learned today. Today we went over shading. Did we start on this side? No, we did not. Shading. We went over lighting and shadows. We talked a little bit about how it works, how it's explained, how the surfaces work, and when to actually apply each one, cast shadows, form shadows. Same thing with highlights. Highlights, rim lighting, and soft lighting. It's the same concept, just applied differently. Instead of adding the color for the light, you subtract the color from the light. So it's one or the other. If you learn either way, you can get both of them easy. We talked a little bit about how to apply it to a character. We talked a little bit how it applies to anatomy in more detail as the more that you add to it. And then we talked a little bit about how you can see depth through line weight. Cool. Then we talked about feet a lot. We talked about feet considerably. We went over the motion, how to apply it, how to add actual anatomy to it, how to represent it according to other parts of the body like the rib cage, and how you can start applying those concepts together, and how to deform them into creating different things like animals and such like that. Then we talked about posing. Posing is going to always be just a matter of understanding your hard surfaces of your rib cage and your hip bones. If you can manage to understand those 2 things, the posing aspect should be incredibly easy. because it's just a matter of moving elements until you get to the desired state. But these are the elements that you draw first. Your rib cage and your hip bones are going to be the things that you focus on the most when you're posing things properly. Cool. And then we talked a little bit about how, if you do not know how to see all this shit like that, how can you start achieving that measure of visualization? And it's as simple as just learning how to view things in a volumetric way, which is just a matter of a lot of practice and a lot of time doing it. So, all right, I think we have a full lesson. Let's see if anybody else has any good questions. When I draw dynamic poses, the anatomy feels weird. Should I learn how the muscles move? Yeah, like, I mean, again, learning your anatomy is going to help you be able to take that knowledge and apply your basic shapes to more complex shapes. So yes, you don't need it for extreme cartoons, but if you want to get to the point where you're a good illustrator, you're going to need to apply knowledge to your basic foundational skills to be able to get there. I have a YouTube channel. It's under Rodgon the Artist. And there's like 300 videos or something like that on it. Like there's thousands of hours worth of time that you guys can go check. Thank you so much. Hey Rod, silly question, but does your art block book cover skulls? I struggle with the more intricate details of the cheekbones, frontal bone. I do believe that the first one has a lot of head structure things, like just kind of like I do with most of my heads. So you will see a bunch of different drawings based on actual anatomy. Like, you know, for example, here I break down how to actually distinguish different aspects of the face. We worked on glasses, we worked on muscles, we worked on all this stuff is normally repeated, not repeated, but it's just mapped out differently in each book. So every book is different. Every book has a slightly different look. And it's meant for you to actually take that book, flip it to a random page, and be like, oh, cool, let's practice eyes. Let's practice hands. Let's practice hair. Let's practice skulls. Oh, I don't know what to draw today. Oh, well, maybe I should draw some arms. Let's draw some lips. Ooh, maybe I like this character. I'm going to trace this character and make a character out of it. Ooh, maybe I should practice proportions. Blah, 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 blah. That's what the art block book is for. So those books are really, really good if you don't really want to like if you have nothing to do in a day and you just want to draw something new and get better at it, that's what those books are for. I go live around this time and I go live at around 10 in the morning as well. I normally do it twice a day now because I have the time to. But sometimes I don't have the time to do it because I'm spending time with my girlfriend. And that's a high priority for me. Like spending time with Vicky, which I came to Scotland to be with, is a gigantic part of my future going forward. So I want to spend as much time as I can with her. So that doesn't always plan out accordingly, but I try to make my best to be able to make sure that you guys get a lesson at least once a day. Oh, if you think about picking it up, I highly suggest it. It's actually like really good to have on your phone because it's a digital book. So you guys can just have it on your phone, flip to a random page, and then see that. Yeah, everything would apply the same when the characters are sitting down. Let me show you guys real fast. So if a character is sitting down, so you have your rib cage, you have your hip bones, your legs would just be going in a different direction. You just have to draw the element that you're sitting on. So you can have a proper place to sit them, and then you can just right? You can just move around your feet until you get to the position that you want. This live will be on YouTube, so you guys can check these out on YouTube. If you missed it and you want to actually go back and learn this, it will be on YouTube immediately after. No, it's just a one-time thing. You guys just purchase a book once and then it's yours. I hate the whole subscription thing, so I don't do that. What sketchbook am I using? I'm using Illo sketchbooks. So if you guys do message them and tell them that Rod sent you, they might give you a little discount, and they will actually probably keep on sponsoring me. So if you guys do purchase the book, a sketchbook or something from them, just let them know that it came from me. How do you differ a teen from an adult? Oh, that's too broad of a topic. I can't draw that in there. What is the name of the book? I have 3 books. I have Art Block, which is the one that I've been talking about. I have Coffee Break Doodles, which is my combination of my favorite sketches from my whole life. And we have Pinups, which is a collection of beautiful ladies. Let's see if I have any beautiful ladies. Just random doodles of girls that I've drawn over time. So it incorporates a lot of hot ladies, and it's like 60 pages worth of like super hot, chill ladies. Let's find some. I drew a Vicky all sorts of ways a couple times ago. Where is Vicky? Hey, here's an example. Just really quick sketches of what I did, but you have finished illustrations in the pinups book. So just a bunch of really fun, pervy things. All right, so with that, I'm going to call it a day. We ended up with 63,000 people in the chat, in the likes. Woo! We ended up with 716 or 15 shares. You guys are rock stars. You guys are amazing. Holy shit. We ended up with like 1,400 people in the chat at one point. 1,400. Wow. That is fucking nuts. Oh my God. Like the last couple lives, and guess what? On Instagram, I have 8. 8 people. 9 people. 10 people. Oh my God. The difference is insane. Fuck Instagram. All right. You guys have a wonderful day. Love you all. Talk to you guys soon. And I will teach you guys something soon. All right? How about that? Yay. Later, Gators.